This is Blood and Cancer, the official podcast of MD-Edge Hematology Oncology. I'm the voice of MD-Edge Podcasts, Nick Andrews. And welcome to episode 68 of Blood and Cancer, the official podcast of MD-Edge Hematology Oncology. I am Nick Andrews, and I'm joined this week, as I always am, by Dr. David Henry. And last week, Dr. Henry, I feel pretty bad. We exposed you for being a bit of a nerd. Not that anybody that serves in the Starship Enterprise is a nerd, but this week, I just created this cocktail that I'm calling Cordelia after Shakespeare.
Why is that, Nick?
Because Shakespeare wrote King Lear in quarantine, and we're all in quarantine, Dr. Henry. So we are equal nerddom, although my nerddom is a little classier than yours. I won't call you out on that on this podcast.
That's true. Star Trek, Shakespeare. All right. Well,
correct.
We could talk about that sometime.
Yeah, we'll have to do that. So welcome to episode 68. This episode, we've got two things coming up for our audience. Both have to do a little bit with technology. The first thing we're going to do right off the top, it's going to coming up a little bit later. Dr. Mason is back to talk about the best tools for doctors with regard to software and technology. You remember a couple episodes ago, episode 62 or 63 back in March, we talked about part one, and part two is where all the good stuff is, in my opinion. You got a lot of photo stuff, got a lot of backup stuff and app stuff. It's really important, and it couldn't be, and we didn't plan it this way, but it could not be more prevalent.
No, it's really wonderful what he does. He, is a wonderful oncologist, hematologist, but he somehow got into tech. Actually, I'm responsible for that, as he says on his recording, giving him his first computer, and he just ran with it. So he's really into useful applications and apps, and so he covers photos and backup and how to use them and what's free and what's not free. So it's really educational and very well spelled out.
And so that's coming up after part one of our podcast this week. This is, again, episode 68. And for those of you that have been paying attention, we have a recurring guest, Dr. Skip Burris. So medical meetings this year, for the most part, canceled. Everything canceled. Obviously, public health, take care of yourself. But that includes ASCO, the American Society of Clinical Oncology, which is something that we've been covering, for years here at MD-Edge. This time, Dr. Henry, not only is it going to be virtual, but I hear it's going to be cost efficient.
Cost efficient. So I really was looking forward to talking to Skip, who is our Asco President this year. And I'm a big fan of his. He's Sarah Cannon, Medical Director, Research, and now Asco President, which is, of course, a wonderful honor and things to do in the usual meeting, which is not happening. So they had to decide to go virtual. And he explains what an enormous headache it was at first, but learned a lot, and it might just even be better. So he'll go through a few things, which is all the abstracts that were going to be presented will be presented on the typical Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday format. They couldn't get everything in, so the educational sessions will not be done, and they'll be named later. He was thinking late summer, and I couldn't stand it and said, will my poster be shown in my living room only, or will you look at that also? He said, no, we're doing posters, and whenever the poster session was supposed to occur, you'll be able to go up and down the hallway looking at posters without getting your feet tired. So actually that might be, and he said this might be onto something. And just as you said, because it's all virtual and very different, they've decided to not charge members. And if you've already sent your money in, they'll be refunding. And so it's really going to be, he explains all of this in a really interesting format on our podcast.
Yes, we're seeing this in a lot of different specialties. We just have new data on how telemedicine visits are not, keeping pace with typical outpatient visits. But with regard to education and virtual experiences, if one has a good attitude, it takes a while, as someone who took more than one class online in undergraduate, it takes a while to snap into it, but the internet is what you want it to be. And if you come to ASCO virtually with open arms, you can get as much out of it as if you were there.
Speaking of our experience with this, med students have actually shown us the way. Most med schools now, I've been amazed to learn from our first and second year students, are streamed. And so whereas I remember sitting in a crowded lecture hall with hundreds of other classmates, now they say it's about a quarter full because you either watch it in your apartment streamed live or play it back at a speed sometimes 1.5 times to get through it faster and still get everything out of it. So maybe it's time we caught up. I'm sorry we're having to catch up in such a
Yeah, we'd like to give a shout out to
epidemic.
any of our listeners that listen at 1.5 times speed. Most of the power listeners do that. And
Exactly right. Love to hear me at 1.5 speed.
Asco covered once again on blood and cancer. We've been doing this for over a year now. I remember this is one. We were really excited to talk to Dr. Burris back in the day when we first launched this podcast, and now it seems like something that he's excited to do. So really great episode. And Dr. Henry, I think this is the first time we've shared both your nerddom and my nerddom on the same episode.
Same time.
Yeah.
And speaking of nerddom, just to mention and to thank them so much, there was a flyover by the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds. Blue Angels Navy, the Thunderbirds Air Force, phenomenal performance teams in their own right. I've seen them both, but never together. And they did a flyover from New York down over New Jersey through Philadelphia down to Delaware. Really spectacular, just to kind of thank the first responders, as they said, and all those who are essential. And I think we should also thank those who are non-essential, who are suffering through these hard times.
Yeah,
I've met some of these pilots, and they're phenomenal people.
Yeah, unreal. I know that Cooper University in Camden, New Jersey, which is really close to where we are, Thomas Jefferson University, the Thomas Jefferson Hospital System in Philly. You and I both, of course, live in Philly. It flew right over us. A lot of people in scrubs on rooftops taking pictures, which was the point. I like to think that there were people in a room somewhere thinking, you know what we need right now? Flyover. And everyone's like, yes, flyover.
I suggest maybe we can ask our publishers to put I have a lot of recordings to put this on our webpage. So those who weren't East Coast can see it. It's really spectacular.
Exactly right. And it's one of those things that it builds morale, or, lets everyone know that, hey, we're thinking about you, and one day at a time, and all that stuff that we keep preaching, one day at a time. Here we go. Coming up right after this, we've got Dr. Skip Burris, and stick around for our part 2 conversation with Dr. Bernard Mason on the tech tools for doctors. You're listening to Blood and Cancer.
I'm your host, Dr. David Henry, and you are listening to our weekly podcast called Blood and Cancer. You can hear us each week from iTunes or wherever you get your podcast recordings from. And also we're online journal at mds.com/hematology-oncology, which is now part of WebMD and Medscape. And I'm really delighted today to be talking to someone who's very timely and in the thick of all this COVID business, Dr. Skip Burris, who is our current Asco President and Chief Medical Officer at Sarah Cannon Center in Nashville. Skip, thanks so much for joining today.
Thank you, David. It's appreciate the time and the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, you're very welcome, and I want to begin by saying, how many bottles of Advil have you gone through? Have you got a supply coming from Amazon?
It is absolutely. I'm trying all various things. So if people need recommendations, they can call me. Well, but you kind of go all over the map, from sadness to the crisis at hand. But it's certainly an unprecedented time, to say the least.
Well, so let's get right into it. ASCO, we all look forward to every year, whether we attend or not. We get the best research, we get the best education, and you make it all happen for us. So this meeting is not going to happen in person in Chicago. It's going to happen virtually. So my first question is, what's that going to look like? How and what plans have you made?
So the staff, as we all know at ASCO, is absolutely fabulous. And as this has been evolving, we have made plans for an entirely virtual meeting. We're going to break up the scientific and educational components, but we will have that Friday afternoon, Saturday and Sunday, that traditional ASCO weekend. We will be presenting all the ASCO abstracts, clinical trial results, and the scientific symposium to our members. There will be done with a timely dedicated sessions. You'll hear the presidential address. You'll hear some featured speakers. And then you'll also see on the web technology the ability to flip between different sessions to hear disease-specific clinical trials reported. And that'll be both live during that weekend, and then it'll endure so you can come back in and see something later, or if you didn't have the opportunity to dial in that weekend.
So original presentations, which we all look for, and educational. So both will be included.
Well, the educational program we're going to push, in the interest of time, to a weekend in early August, and we'll be firming up those dates, but we'll likely go toward the part of August. In addition, we will have all the importance, as you mentioned, of these clinical trial results coming out. We need to get this information out to the public, and we feel like we can be a little more timely in that regard. And then people love the educational sessions. And with the busyness of the pandemic, we'll just push that off to early August and have the same speakers, the same quality of presentations, and make that a great experience as well.
And that'll be virtual, of course. I guess that'll be virtual as well.
Yes, we're going to, do the ASCO meetings and participate in whatever activities are scheduled all virtually, at least through the summer. And everybody with their prayers and fingers crossed, hoping that by the time we get to the fall, maybe we'll see the opportunity to interact. But certainly I think we'd all agree the COVID-19 story is going to be with us for a while.
So speaking of interaction, of course, one of the great parts of ASCO is that, and speakers then ask questions from microphones 1, 2, 3, and 4. How will that be handled virtually?
So it's going to require some discipline among our listeners and participants. We're going to have the live chat feeds during these broadcast sessions so that we can facilitate discussion. So obviously this is a first. I'm optimistic that it will go well. I think one thing that's been interesting, you and myself and others have had the opportunity over the last couple of weeks to be in more WebEx conversations than we've ever been in.
Yeah.
I certainly know how to do a live chat feed a few weeks ago, and now I might be an expert by next month. So I think technologically, with the telemedicine, telehealth, I'm hopeful that by the time we get to that first weekend in June, that this will be old hat for us.
Well, speaking of that, you're probably very into IT and things, WebEx and so forth. Now, what platform did you decide to use? And you're expecting thousands of people. Will that work out? So how is it going to be given out to us? Is there one particular platform you're using that's stable enough to handle all the people?
Yeah, so actually, ASCO has recently hired a chief digital officer. So better to be lucky than good. A decision made by the board last year. So we have hired Chris Merlins as our chief digital officer. It'll be a cloud-based platform to be able to handle the volume. And then we'll be using some partnerships with technology companies to actually get this out there. Our support technology company that helps us with the annual meeting has got the capabilities to help roll that out. I think a couple of things I should mention too about that is all the CME, MOC, maintenance certification, and continuing education credits will all be available. And then we've decided to make the scientific program annual meeting at the beginning of June and the educational meeting in August free to our members. So we know there's a lot of hardship going on at this time and a lot of competing priorities. We want to make sure people feel comfortable getting access to the information and make that as pleasant as possible.
Wow, that's incredible. So the CME will continue, and those of us who've already signed up, did I understand that you're going to refund the registration fees?
Yes. So there'll be opportunities to, parlay that to next year if that's easier for you, or to have that credited back to your credit card. But we will take care of all that. So that'll be exciting for the members as well.
So that's wonderful. Now, here's an interesting question. What kind of attendance do you expect? Do you think you might have more? Because, of course, in the best of times, not everybody can travel for reasons of things at home or their practice or financial. Now anybody who's an ASCO member or signs up can participate. Have you thought or talked about that in your meetings? How many are coming to the party?
Yeah, we have thought about that, and I think you bring up a great point, because we always have about half of the 40,000 attendees are international, with probably half of that group coming from Asia and from parts of Europe, in addition to our Canadian colleagues and the like. So I think this is going to open up much more of Asia to participate. The fact that it'll be enduring and recorded, they'll have the opportunity to come in on their time zone and watch the shows. And then we know there's many in Europe who are very involved in this research. Not everybody has the opportunity to travel all the way to Chicago. So for the weekend, I'm cautiously optimistic. I think, we'll probably get 10,000 or so that'll be on during the actual times when we're showing it. But I think, as you mentioned, in terms of individuals who end up logging in and accessing the information, our prior records have been in the 40,000 range, and I certainly think we'll pass that for all the reasons you mentioned.
think you probably will. And that reminds me to go back to the scientific presentations. There were a certain number that abstracts were accepted. People were going to be presenting in person. I know the educations are pushed off to August, but were all the scientific presentations that were picked to present going to present?
Yes, we actually are going to be able to do that. The staff is working right now, and letters are going out as we speak, advising those that will be doing oral presentations about how those should be recorded, and we're going to work to facilitate that. Those will be due by the middle of May, and we'll have the opportunity to work with physicians if those need to be repeated. The posters will be handled in the traditional format. We'll have the posters that will all be available for viewing on the web. There's a great technology platform that will enable those posters to be easily viewed. And then with those poster sessions, we'll handle the poster discussion by having somebody talk about the various posters. We're actually going to also use some guides to help highlight the most impactful abstracts. Every abstract is scored. So we're going to try to make it easier for clinicians to access what we have determined is practice-changing trial data or practice-changing science. And I'll just throw a teaser out there right now. Every Asco president always worries about their plenary session.
Yes.
And are there going to be groundbreaking or practice-changing abstracts we present at the plenary session? Looks fabulous. And we're going to have a handful of really state-of-the-art clinical trial results presented with discussants during the plenary. And again, that'll be unopposed. And as traditionally we see it on Sunday, we'll have the same story taking place, and people can either dial in and watch it from their couch, or they can come back and watch it later when they have time.
Well, a couple of things. I'm so happy to hear about posters. I thought my poster, I just have to hang it in the living room and hope the family understood what it was. So it'll be shown. People can see posters. And we're recording this in mid-April, so I guess it's too soon for you to say what's at plenary, because that usually comes out in middle of May. The abstracts will be released. When are you releasing the abstracts?
So the abstract's going to be released at 15th of May timeframe. So that'll come out. So it'll be out, and then there'll be some press briefings that'll occur around the meeting. So there'll be several different avenues for individuals to get information. But, the posters you bring up, I frankly know that we always get suggestions on how we can make poster sessions better. The halls tend to get crowded, or you're watching an oral session and you don't make it over there. So actually, as you talked about earlier in our conversation, it might be that outstanding posters like yours get more attention because people have the opportunity to come back and not be time pressured to really look at those. You see people running around the hall, snapping pictures of posters, opposed to actually having it available on the web.
Well, you wonder, I'm sure there'll be a post-mortem, so to speak, after this is all done this summer, of what worked and you might keep going forward. It's certainly taking a lot of time and effort and technology, but maybe that's something for those who can attend, could watch posters and presentations in a future format.
I think you're right. Everything about the way we're practicing medicine, attending meetings, interacting is likely to be different. It's going to be like every other event where we talk about pre or post the Gulf War or 9/11. Yeah. I think we'll be about pre and post the pandemic. My patients, nervous at first, have loved the telehealth visits. I was dreading having my face on webcast all the time, and now it turns out that it's just part of life now. I think similarly, Cliff Hudis, ASCO CEO, and myself have discussed this. How the ASCO meeting looks going forward will probably change. People are going to like this ability to go back and review the data and how we present it. So I think you're right. We're going to see a different ASCO meeting going forward, and we'll take the best that we learned from this meeting and apply it going forward. Indeed,
making lemonade out of lemons. Wow, what an amazing turn of events that'll give us something new and different. Well, lastly, I thought we might, I know ASCO is doing something called COVID Cancer Registry. Can you explain what that is and how that'll work and how that might help us?
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, David. So we have first received at ASCO just a number of questions that came in from both patients through the cancer.net side and from our members through the ASCO.org about COVID-19, concerns about should patients be treated, how do we continue on, the phrase "stay safe but stay the course." Cancer is so different. We can't shut down like we have done with regard to some of the joint replacement surgeries and valve replacement surgeries in the cardiovascular arena. So ASCO decided the best we could do, well, we put out the frequently asked questions and got some experts to comment, but really to begin to aggregate real-time data and learn from this. So under the leadership of Dr. Rich Shilsky, who heads Centra, ASCO's Center for Research and Analytics, we launched the Astro Registry. We reached out to our pharma biotech colleagues and through Conquer Cancer and received some support so a special thanks there for those companies who've helped put this up with our manpower. And this is an idea to not just get a snapshot of data, but to actually get longitudinal data. And with the funding that's coming in, we're hoping that we can continue to have the sites receive some funding to continue both collecting the baseline and follow-up data about how the virus is impacting cancer care and patient outcomes. You know, I think we're going to learn a lot from just basic demographics, but we're going to see and be able to track various groups of patients and how they perform. There's been stories out of China and other earlier hotspots, Italy and the like, about lung cancer patients versus not, older patients versus those who are younger, those who are on immunotherapy. We plan on having real-time data releases, so we're going to deliver periodic reports to the cancer community and the broader public on key learnings, try to have it as a real-time educational tool. Just as soon as we learn something about the COVID-19 epidemic and how it's affecting cancer care, to get that information out. So some of the early things we're already taking note of is the rapid implementation of telemedicine and seeing some of the treatment modifications and delays. So exciting. There's a number of registries that are out there, and we're partnering with other societies to make sure the data is aggregated. But this, I think, will be unique in the fact that it's going to have a longitudinal aspect to it with some longer-term follow-up. And it will just be a great learning tool for our oncologists and hopefully an educational tool for other providers and our patients.
Wow, really incredible. And if people want to know more about this or how to participate or generate or give data, it's on the webpage. How would they find out more about it?
Right. So great question. On asco.org, there is a link that takes you straight into the registry. We've got a number of practices that have already signed up. So there's great information there about it. It's actually a fairly straightforward process in terms of how the various practices can participate. And actually there's a wealth of information that's on the ASCO website, asco.org, about COVID-19 and some of the things that are going on and some of the educational tools. And then for your patients, Dr. Mary Markham is one of our cancer communication leaders, and she has been having a blog about coronavirus, COVID-19, and patients with cancer. That's on cancer.net. So I encourage any of our listeners who have patients with questions. That's a very friendly website, cancer.net, and a great place to get some information.
Well, Skip, I think we've covered everything I wanted to ask, unless I missed asking you something about what you'd like our members to know. I really thank you for taking the time to talk to us. And on our Blood and Cancer podcast, to remind our listeners, we've been speaking to our current president, who will certainly go down in memory as one of the most unusual years, and thanks to his leadership, one of the best outcomes that could be happening for ASCO, Dr. Skip Burris, who is Chief Medical Officer at Sarah Cannon and our current reigning ASCO president. Skip, thanks so much, and good luck to you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it.
Welcome to this podcast bonus material. I've been speaking, for those of you who listened to our previous piece, to Dr. Bernard Mason, professor of medicine, oncologist, hematologist here at the University of Pennsylvania. And you're listening to Blood and Cancer, which is not talking about blood and cancer this week, but about applications either on your stationary machine, computer, PC, or mobile device, and how you might interact with this world either for business or pleasure. So, Bernie, why don't we continue, and we're going to do some bonus material of other things you want to mention, so go right ahead.
In the theme of things that are free that are already on your computer that might be handy, I'm going to talk about sticky notes. Now, sticky notes is on all PCs. If you have Windows 10, it's either there or you can download it from the Microsoft App Store, and then you can put it on your taskbar. It looks like a Post-it note, like a yellow Post-it note. If you click it, you can make a quick note. If you're in a program and you want to make a note of a FedEx number or a phrase that you want to paste into an email or whatever, or you're on the phone, you can put it on the sticky notes. Now, the interesting thing about sticky notes is it can sync with other devices. I like this idea of having information anywhere I go. So if I have a bunch of sticky notes on my computer, it will sync to any other device that's signed into your Microsoft account.
So this is a Microsoft feature.
It's a Microsoft feature.
Okay.
Now, here's the tricky part. Whether you know it or not, Microsoft decided to give you OneNote free on all phone and tablet devices. So on your iPhone, on your Android phone, on your iPad, you can download OneNote for free. Now, it's not for free on your PC. You have to buy Microsoft Office. It's one of the Microsoft Office apps. It's a note-taking app. What's little known is that as of a year ago, inside OneNote is sticky notes. It's on the bottom if it's on your iPhone. It's on the right upper part of the screen if it's on your iPad. And it's synchronized with your home computer as long as you're signed into Microsoft. So if you download OneNote to your iPhone, let's say, and did some note-taking on your computer in sticky notes, it'll be on your phone, and vice versa. If you erased a note on your phone, it'll be erased on your home computer. It's the same thing we've been talking about before. And I have sticky notes through OneNote on my phone, my two iPads, my desktop computer, and a laptop computer. And if I take a note, it's there on all my other devices, no matter where I am.
So I'm thinking practically use going to medical, I'm making rounds. I use Epic, as probably many of our listeners do, and I want to make some notes as I get back to the office to put into my notes. And so I could use the voice. I have an iPhone, so the voice app on my iPhone and dictate a note into sticky notes, and then then it would go to my stationary device.
Your desktop when you got back to your computer. Yeah.
Wow.
The trick is you have to get OneNote. You have to download OneNote. There is no sticky note app for the phone, but it's within OneNote. And Microsoft stuck it in there about a year ago, and most people don't know about this.
Yeah, including this one right here.
And most people don't realize OneNote is free, whether or not you have Microsoft Office. You don't need Microsoft Office.
Oh,
it's free on all devices.
All right.
They're giving away their software, Microsoft. They're making their money on the cloud now.
Yeah. So I think you had one or two more bonus features of material.
Okay, here is a bonus feature that's not a program or an app. It's a service. It's a free service of Firefox. Many of you may remember Firefox. Now, I don't personally use Firefox anymore. I actually like Chrome, although Firefox apparently has improved this browser. But they do offer a free service. If you go to Firefox, which is in Mozilla. Mozilla is a company that makes Firefox. So www.mozilla.org. You can create an account. Just need an email address and a password. Then you can sign into send.firefox.com. What this allows you to do is to send people large files. It's encrypted, and you can attach a password to this. So let's say you have a big video. You can't send it by email. It's too big. Or you don't want to email an attachment to somebody. You're worried about people not opening attachments. They shouldn't open attachments, actually. It's dangerous. So you can sign into your send.firefox.com. It's free. You can upload up to 2.5 gigabytes of whatever from your computer. You can create a link. Once you upload the file, it'll offer you a link. You can copy the link. You can then say, I want this file to be available for up to 7 days or 100 downloads. 1 to 100 downloads or up to 7 days. You can make it 1 day, and then it disappears. So the link will be available for, at the most, a week, and at the most, 100 downloads. You can then send the link to your friend and say, I just put a video up on this link. Here's the link. and they can click the link and download whatever's up there. You can also have a password attached to this, so they have to use a password to get into the link.
A question for you is, so I haven't used this, and I certainly am intrigued and will, but I'm thinking of my Gmail account, and occasionally I've sent a big file, I dictate it, and I didn't upload it, or a photo. It'll say, oh, this is too big, and it's loading into a link, I guess, that it then sends to the receiver. So is this different from that feature on Gmail?
Now, Apple does it. If you have Apple will do this within its email, but most other emails don't do this. They will not automatically create a big file online. Yeah, Apple does allow you to do this now, and so you can send large files via email if you have an iPhone and you're doing it through Apple. But most of your email accounts on your desktops and most other email accounts will not allow you to send very large files. And like I said, you may not want to send a large file via email. It's kind of dangerous to click a file in an email, especially if you don't know what it is.
Absolutely.
So this way you can tell somebody, I'm sending you a link, it's encrypted, there's a password attached to it, I'm the one sending it to you. You can tell them in advance, and then they can go and get it.
Well, I want to conclude our segment with any other bonus material, but I'm going to ask you the final question in a second, which is backup. Bernie and I are big fans of Leo Laporte, the tech guy, who does Twit, giving him a big plug. This Week in Tech, he calls it Twit. And every Saturday and Sunday, he records a podcast, and he's religious about backup. So unless you have another bonus piece you want to mention, we'll finish by talking backup. Oh, a couple more bonus pieces.
Go ahead. Do backup first. Backup is very important. I'm a fanatic about backup. I lost everything on my hard drive 2 Labor Days in a row about 10 years ago, and I was in tears. When I had to reconstruct everything I had from fragmentary backups here and there, and I lost a lot. So I actually agree with Leo Laporte with the 3-2-1 backup. I think the minimum backup is 3 backups on 2 different media, 1 off-site. Because what if your house burns down, as Leo says? So, the off-site could be in the cloud, or the off-site could be you actually, send a DVD or a thumb drive somewhere else or bring it to work. And I personally use, first of all, the OneDrive sync.
We'll do that.
It will give you a backup, but it's not the best backup because if your hard drive is failing and files are getting corrupted and erased, which happened to me about a year ago in a failing hard drive, then your OneDrive sync is going to synchronize those corrupted files and those deleted files. So your backup might be flawed. And the same thing with the G drive, backup and sync. It's great, but it may not be the best backup if your hard drive is failing over a period of time. You don't realize it. You might be spewing bits and pieces all over the place, and you might have bad data that's being backed up and replaced. So, I think you still need a backup program. So I actually use Second Copy. There are many backup programs. I like Second Copy.
I use Carbonite. You use Second Copy.
There are many backup programs. You ought to get one of them. And I back up to a physical hard drive connected to my computer. I also back up to my file stream in my infinite Gmail drive that I told you about. And I do it in multiple different ways with archiving. Second Copy allows you to archive, so you have versioning. In other words, there might be a version of a file that you changed or deleted that you might want to go back to someday. So I actually keep old versions of deleted files in my backup. And I also have a once a month just backing up my document folder to various places. I just do it physically. And I also put a hard drive in my safe deposit box once every few months. So
There's your offsite.
I do multiple backups, cloud backup, hard drive in my house, hard drive in my safe deposit box, multiple cloud backups. I don't take any chances. I must have 5 different backups of everything.
Well, in our last few minutes before we conclude, do you want to give us any other bonus features?
A fun bonus app is called Flight Radar 24. Flight Radar 24 will track the flights of all the commercial planes in the world, every airline, also a lot of general aviation, helicopters, and even weather balloons. It's a fun app because you can sit there with your grandchildren and look at all the flights anywhere you want. My 7-year-old grandchildren and I tracked a flight from Philadelphia to Manchester, New Hampshire the other day. And while we were doing that, she found a Google internet balloon over the Atlantic Ocean. So it's fun to do, just to see the traffic at your local airport, see the flights. Actually, you see the icons of the planes as they take off and land. It's really quite remarkable. This was the program that was used to track the Ukrainian flight that was shot down over Iran last month. All the news services use it. It's handy when you travel, because if you're at the airport and the gate agent tells you your flight's delayed by 10 minutes, they're always lying. And if you have this program, you can actually find out what flight is coming into that gate, and then you can track it and find out where it really is. And if it's 2 hours away,
it's not 10 minutes.
It's not going to be a 10-minute delay. You better start rebooking. So it is very handy if you do a lot of traveling. But if you just like air travel, it's a fun program for entertainment, and it's useful when you're traveling. Another program that might come in handy is free for the iPhone. It's called Go Record. G-O-R-E-C-O-R-D. This is a free program you can download to the phone. You put the icon in your control center, and if you're watching a video on your phone, you can click the icon and record it as a video that will be saved in your photo, the photos part of your phone. My daughter was recently on a TV show being interviewed, and I was able to record the stream on my phone using this Go Recorder. You can also record like YouTube videos or any other video that's coming in. Anything that's on your screen will be recorded. Basically records your screen with the audio, so you get the whole thing.
All right. Well, for those of you who are novices listening, I think we've given you a lot of cute and practical applications to take a look at. And for those of you who are expert, I'm sure even you have learned something. I certainly did myself. And once again, you will find these show notes, which Dr. Mason has done so nicely, on our website, which is mdh.com/hematology-oncology or mdh.com/podcast. So I want to thank once again so much my friend and colleague for so many years, Dr. Bernard Mason, professor of medicine here at the University of Pennsylvania, and hematologist-oncologist, and expert in things high-tech. Bernie, thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you all for listening.